Video is going to cover starting up a test network for Telcoin network. So it assumes as prerequisites that you have installed, you've checked out the repository and the submodules. So basically in the README, the quick start, this also kind of covers the network, but we're going to go in a little more depth. But you need to make sure you've checked things out and you've initialized submodules, or you will not successfully be able to build. Then the script it's going to run is in the etc directory. There is a script called local testnet. You should also consider this documentation for how to start a network. We keep this script working, so even if documentation somewhere else is out of date, this script should be up to date. It runs through the entire process of creating configurations and keys for validators. It creates 4 validators, 1 observer node. An observer is a node that just follows consensus in the chain but doesn't participate in consensus at all. It then runs through a genesis ceremony, creating, the genesis, and then it will start up all of the nodes, print out your RPC ports, and that sort of thing. It does do a full release build, so you don't have to pre-build. You can if you want. The release build is going to take some time to run, so expect that. In my case, I've already built, so it was fast. But this step, it'll sit here, it'll do a build, and it'll take a few minutes. So once you're done, you've got 4 validators and observer. It prints out your RPCs. One of the validators will be running on the standard 8545 port. You can run the PS command and see that you've got your network running. Notice when I created the network, this dev funds option, you need to provide this, and you need to give this an address that you control the private key of. Essentially, this is your faucet basically on your test net. This address is going to be funded with a more tel than you should ever be able to use. So you can then fund other accounts and do whatever you want from there. It's required to provide this parameter the first time when you're doing a configuration. You don't have to provide it later, but it doesn't hurt anything if you leave it on, if you just, restart the network with the same command. Dash dash start is telling the script that not only do you want to configure the network, you want to start the network. So you could leave that off and run with dev funds. You would just get configuration files for everything, but the network not running. There's one other parameter we'll cover in a second. You might want, there's a base fees parameter that would let you, essentially, the Telcoin network sends base fees to a governance safe, so you could set that to an address if you want to play around with doing something with base fees. Um, so that's it. You've got, at this point, you can do things like run Foundry. You've got your RPCs. So all of that stuff is there. You can hit any of the 5 RPCs that are available. They should all work, mix match, do whatever you want there. Your configuration, everything is stored in the local validators directory. So you don't really need Genesis once you're up and running. That was kind of the directory to make stuff. You'll also notice there's log files in here. So each node that is running, its logs are being directed to its own file. So you've got split logs, you can check things, do whatever there. And then each individual node also has its configuration and databases. If you want to experiment with, say, starting a node from scratch, you can delete the blob store when the node is shut down, of course, blob store, consensus DB, and static files, and then restart, and the node should rejoin the network, catch up, and rejoin consensus. No, do not delete its configuration. It obviously still needs its keys and other stuff, so you can't delete that. If you look at the script, the keys are wrapped, so they're password protected. The password, you'll see it in the script, is just set an environment variable. It's local. So if you want to start a node up directly, you would need to you basically need to tell it that you want to you need to ask for a password. Sorry, I'm actually running this the wrong way. So For instance, if you want to start a node up directly, like I've killed node 4 and I want to restart it, you'll need to give it this parameter, which will ask for the passphrase, and you just tell it type in local, which again is in the script. So that's how you would stop an individual node and start it up outside of the script. That should work. That should work fine. And then the only other thing we have, there's a space fee. This is an optional thing. It defaults to an address. Well, you have to look in the source code. It's mostly zeros, and it's essentially going to be a governance safe. So, but if you want to experiment, all the base fees for transactions go to this address. And yeah, I think that is the gist of it. And then, you can use PS to see your running nodes. Also, since these are all running in the background, when I'm done, I usually just do a kill all Telcoin network. You'll see it takes it a second to, takes a second or two to shut down, but it will shut down. It does a clean shutdown with kill all. So everything shuts down and your network is down. You can restart the network to just pick back up where it was. You can also just completely, you know, well, that was removing some database. If you just remove, local validators, now you're starting again from scratch. So I think that basically covers it. Feel free, of course, to just hack that script, change the number of validators. One note, you absolutely have to have three validators to run a network. Don't try to run with less than four. If one of the four validators goes down, the network will still continue to run. If you kill two validators, you're going to bring the network to a halt. So something to bear in mind. So if you run a test with two validators, I don't think you're going to get a working network. So I wouldn't do that, but you can increase the number of validators, kill them, do things like that.